Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. So today we're going to be tackling the challenge of the Corrupted Spider Tournament, meaning we can only use champions from the Corrupted Alliance, which for anyone who doesn't know, you can see the families of factions in the index, and the Corrupted Alliance is the Demon Spawn, Undead Hordes, Dark Elves, and Knights Revenant. Thankfully, we've seen this specific iteration before, so this will be fairly similar to the previous iterations that we've done in the past, but let's take a look at the tournament itself, Corrupted Alliance only in the Spider's Den. So for starters, the first thing you'll notice is that we do actually have a Void Shard finally up for grabs in one of these once again. They've kind of transitioned to more to having like Prism Jewels or Prism Fragments or whatever for different types of summoning pool events in these when they happen to overlap with those. But I guess for this one, there is no summon pool going on right now. And so 2100 points will give you a Void Shard, which is just a good investment in terms of your energy. But on top of that, if you do happen to have a relatively easy group, then you could also take one of the top 3 spots or top 4 spots and walk away with some 6-star Relentless gear. So be sure to check on the difficulty of your group because a lot of people will ignore these types of events just because they might be too hard. This specific type of challenge is quite easy, so I do expect that it's going to be hard to find an easy group, but nonetheless, always check your group just to see because you never know what might happen in your group. Hopping over to the Spider's Den itself, let's talk about the best stages to farm. If you want just the best of the best gear, then making a team for stage 10 on hard mode is the way to go. It's not the easiest thing to do in the world, of course. It is hard mode after all, especially with the restrictions, but nonetheless it is possible, and I do have a team to showcase for you guys that can do stage 10 on hard mode. But if that is proving too difficult, then feel free to stick to normal mode and I'll showcase a team for this one as well. Stage 25 will give you the best gear in terms of quality when it comes to normal mode. The most efficient stage when it comes to getting points in the tournament and or a Dungeon Divers event, i.e. the best points per energy spent, is going to be stage 20, so feel free to do that one if you have a really easy one-shot Cold Heart Lydia type team, which I'm not going to be showing you, but I definitely know a lot of people will be running the quad Cold Heart and Lydia type composition. Or if you're more in the mid-game progressing through, then stage 16 will suffice because it is much easier to do and you still maintain your chance to get some 6-star gear whilst getting a decent amount of tournament event points. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first team I have to showcase you guys, which is optimized for stage 25 of normal mode. And it is your pretty standard HP burn, control, and reset team with the double Cold Hearts for the enemy max HP hits. We have an HP burn champion who is Tyrant Ixelmore on my account, but this could easily be Akoth the Seared if you have him. He's also Demon Spawn and does effectively the same job. And then our control champion is Achak the Wenderin, who has the AoE freeze, and then we reset with Renegade, who is the Knights Revenant. So a team like this is relatively straightforward, so let's go ahead and see it in action. And this is kind of the style, or actually this is the exact team that I used to run way back when, before hard mode dungeons came out, because it is just super effective against this type of boss. So Cold Heart, number 1, is the fastest on the team, and then that also helps us make sure that all the spiderlings spawn, so we can put out the burn immediately, and then we control them with the freeze, and then we just kind of wait and wait, reset, place out more debuffs, etc. But essentially, once we get through, I think, well, I guess we're going to get 4 Heartseekers, but once we get 5 Heartseekers, we should be good to go in terms of killing the boss, and or if we just have enough time and all the HP burns tick long before the boss gets a turn, we should be good to go as well. So this type of team usually will be done in just under a minute or so, depending upon the relative speed and the cooldown effects of the champions on the squad. So there you go, 48 seconds. Again, it might vary, but somewhere under a minute is where I would typically expect a team like this to perform. It's relatively accessible. Again, Tyrant Ixelmore could be Akoth the Seared, and aside from that, it's 2 epics, and then it'd be 3 rares alongside them. For the hard mode variation, which is the team that I'm going to be running, it does take a little bit more nuance to create a team that can work, but nonetheless, this is kind of essentially my normal a stage 10 hard mode team, except I had to make one swap. I dropped out Stock the Broken because he's Ogren Tribes, which does not qualify for the restrictions of the tournament, and I just threw in with Thrala because the AoE Hex helps us deal a little bit more damage to all the minions. So once again, it's relatively self-explanatory, especially if you've seen my composition before. But we have Calvalax placing some poisons, we have Mithrala coming in placing the Hex, then we have Tomb Lord in there placing more poisons, and this is all to power up Calvalax, whose A3 does damage based on the amount of poisons out there. It's pseudo enemy max HP, but he will kill all the minions there, and the spider will live in this instance just because we don't have enough damage to one-shot the entirety of the spider, but we do kill all the minions, and that's really what matters. And essentially we just kind of cycle through some abilities, but once we get back to the spider's turn, she has enough poison stacked on her that she will just instantly die as soon as she goes. So there you go, 30-ish seconds, 35 seconds or so. So this is the team that I'm going to be running, 13 turns. It's fast enough for my needs, and that's all that really matters, and it meets the restrictions of the tournament. So really quickly, let's run through the builds on these champions featured on these teams in case you'd like to replicate something similar for yourself. Starting with my Renegade, who's in a shield set with some life gear. She is level 50, so take that into account when we're looking at her stats, but 35,000 on the HP, 1800 defense, 203 on the speed, and essentially she's just the slowest on the team so that everyone else goes, and then she resets them afterward. And then a little bit of accuracy, 291. She does not have any masteries, as you might expect, because she's not even maxed out, although she is booked because she is a rare champion. Next up, we have my Cold Heart number 2, who's built in Destroy and Perception. This is optimized for Scarab King, hence the blood shield on the ring. And her total stats are as follows: 43,000 on the HP, 3k on the attack, 1900 on the defense, 231 on the speed, 70% crit rate, because that's all you need on a Cold Heart when you're optimizing around her A3, which has a 30% boost to her crit rate on that ability, 255 on the crit damage, and then 351 accuracy, which is enough for Doom Tower Hard. For the blessing, I opted for Hero Soul because that would help in instances like the spider, where there are minions, but in this case, stage 25 has an enemy max HP cap, and so this just helps her ensure that she's going to hit the cap compared to not using it, but it's not really that important as far as utility. Then for the masteries, it's still kind of optimized around enemy max HP, so we're hugging a lot of the left-hand side of the offense tree, but we're banking over to the bottom here, where we do have flawless execution for an extra 20% crit damage, and then a little bit of the accuracy stuff on the support tree. Evil Eye does help in this instance because we're dropping the turn meter in between the Heartseekers when we use our A1. Next to her is Cold Heart number 1, who's in a Reflex set and Perception, and her total stats are fairly similar, but 41,000 on the HP, 3,200 on the attack, 1,800 on the defense, 252 on the speed, 72% crit rate, 246 on the crit damage, and 367 on the accuracy. She's more optimized for the Dark Fae encounter in the Doom Tower. In this case, this Cold Heart is designed to do as much damage as possible over time, and so I do have Phantom Touch on her instead because of the quad hitter on the A1. And then for the masteries, they are essentially the exact same as Cold Heart number 2, except they're a little bit more finished, but we're still coming down to get flawless execution as the T6 on the offense tree, and then we're ending on Sniper, going through Evil Eye on the support tree. Atchak the Wenderin is next, and he is in a 4-piece Merciless set, which might surprise you, but a little bit of cooldown reduction when he does it, or a chance to have cooldown reduction when he does the AoE on the freeze. And total stats here are as follows: 60,000 on the HP, 3,500 on the defense, 242 on the speed, and then 337 on the accuracy, which is enough to land the freeze in the stage 25 of the dungeon, and then some probably for the Cursed City as well. For the blessing, I opted for Cruelty just because AoE attack on the freeze can lower the defense of all the targets, and the boss included as well. And then for the masteries, because once again, I used to use the champion in my primary spider team. I used to run him in a stun set, and so I still have those old masteries from way back then for Fearsome Presence that would synergize, which would have synergized with the stun set, but also helps increase the chances of the freeze, which is only a 90% chance when booked, so this increases it to 95% chance. Aside from that, we're going down the support tree and picking up as much of the accuracy stuff as well as the turn meter stuff, just to help him cycle through and get back to the AoE freeze as soon as possible. And then lastly, for the normal mode team, I have Tyrant Ixomore, who's just in a mix of gear perception with some speed, and then a little bit of pinpoint with the banner. But total stats here are 73,000 on the HP, 3,400 on the defense, 214 on the speed, and then 300 on the accuracy, which again, just like Atchak, is enough to land it in the dungeon and beyond. For the blessing, I don't have one, but I'd probably go Brimstone if I had the choice, just because he has enough accuracy to land it in PvE encounters. And then for the masteries, we're hugging the left-hand side of the offense tree, coming all the way down to the tier 6 of 4 master, and the support tree, similar to Atchak to a degree. We're coming down, picking up the turn meter boosting stuff, again to cycle back through or to the AoE HP burn, but also getting lasting gifts because of the increased defense and ally protection in his kit. Moving on to the hard mode team champions, we have my Tomb Lord, who's in Perception and Immortal, and his total stats are as follows: 65,000 on the HP, 3,500 on the attack, 2,200 on the defense, 272 on the speed, full crit rate, a little bit of crit damage, and 382 on the accuracy, which again is enough to land the debuffs against hard mode dungeons, which is around 350 accuracy in terms of the requirement. He's also on plenty of teams, Hard One Fire Knight, as well as Scarab King alongside my Cold Heart. For the blessing, I went with Phantom Touch. That is optimized for hard mode Fire Knight because it's an extra chance to place damage onto the shield with the A1. And then for the masteries, similar to what we've seen before, but instead of going down to War Master, we're going down to Giant Slayer as far as the T6 is concerned. And then for the support tree, mostly standard debuffer stuff, hugging the right hand side. But in this case, we're banking over to Cycle of Magic just because this A3 is on a 4-turn cooldown, and there's a chance that it comes down to a 3-turn cooldown. Next up, we have Walking Tomb Drang, who's in Speed and Guardian. The Guardian set is because I use him in Iron Twins, and he's just taking damage on behalf of other people. 77,000 on the HP, 3,300 on the defense, 256 on the speed, and then 490 on the resistance. Because he doesn't need any accuracy in his kit, I opted to go for resistance, and that is just enough for most PvE encounters. For the blessing, didn't really think much was useful on him, especially after the blessing rework from last year, so I just went with Intimidating Presence to increase the power of auras. And then for the masteries, pretty much standard stuff here on the offense tree. Most of the left hand side ending on War Master as the final one. Again, we don't need any accuracies, so the support tree doesn't do as much. Defense tree, a little bit of tankiness stuff, and notably ending on Retribution because he can counterattack and potentially activate HP burns on his A1. Calvalax, who is in a different build than you might have seen him in the past before, but he is in Perception and Savage, so he hits a little bit harder than he used to. He used to be in Double Cruel and Perception. 34,000 on the HP, 6,200 on the attack, 2,600 on the defense, 236 on the speed, full crit rate, 249 on the crit damage, and then 381 on the accuracy. Once again, enough to land the poisons against hard mode Spider. For the blessing, I've gone back and forth, but I ultimately settled on a Hero Soul because he is primarily my Spider champion, and he gets the benefit of all the Spiderlings being alive and dealing a bit extra damage when he uses his A3, and notably he is still unbooked, although I should probably just book him just because I can, not because he really needs it, but I digress. For the masteries, similar to the Cold Heart, except we're optimizing him more for the one-hit wonder, and so those are the like initial hit type of nuker masteries, but ultimately ending on flawless execution just to increase the damage output he can do, with that scales with the amount of poisons on the target. And then the support tree, fairly standard debuffer masteries, hugging the right hand side of the support tree, ending on Sniper and Master Hexer. Next up, we have Theodore, whose role on the team is the AoE HP burn activator, and he's in double perception with some stone skin 2-piece. Total stats are as follows: 67,000 on the HP, 3,700 on the defense, 252 on the speed, 477 on the resistance, 367 on the accuracy. So he's built for PvE. I use him in Dragon as well as on my Spider team, and he has enough resistance to resist things in PvE, and then enough accuracy to land his poisons as need be against hard mode dungeons. For the blessing, Brimstone, of course, he has enough accuracy to land his debuffs, and so Brimstone just helps him kill bosses faster whenever it lands. And then for the masteries, defense and support tree, which is a little bit different than you might expect, but the support tree is fairly standard debuffer masteries until we get to the end, where I'm ending on Oppressor, which just increases his turn meter fill rate for each active debuffs, i.e. all the poisons that he places in a kit. So he goes a little bit faster than other people on the team when he places debuffs, essentially. And the defense tree, a little bit more tankiness stuff. Didn't decide to finish out all of his masteries. And then lastly, we have Mithrala, who is in an arena build with Untouchable and Perception and Triple Reaction, which is a fun fact. She barely gets crit when we go second, but I digress. 73,000 on the HP, 5k on the defense, 280 on the speed, 279 on the resistance, and 729 on the accuracy. But combined, she's somewhere around 1,000 when it comes to her resistance, effectively given her passive. For the blessing, I've gone for Temporal Chains because she's designed to, stay alive with the reaction, but also kind of cut in if possible and cleanse anything that the enemies might have done. So I went with that. And then for the masteries, of course, we want more accuracy, so we're coming down to Eagle Eye. Fairly standard debuffer masteries on the support tree, but indexing a little bit more on the turn meter for the buffs because she places a little bit more buffs than debuffs, and then a little bit more accuracies along the way. Defense tree, we're making a nice crescent moon just because I do want solidarity, because she places a lot of buffs and that can increase her resistance in the fight, making it less likely that anything were to happen to her. And then, counterattack with the Retribution is also pretty handy. Now, of course, you might not have the exact same champions as me, so let's talk about other champions that could be useful for this particular fight if you do happen to have them. Starting off with the HP burn burn champions, which is a very viable strategy even on normal and hard mode of Spider. Demon Spawn happened to have the most HP burners just by happenstance. Tyrant Ilxamor is the one that I showcased, but again, that could easily just be Akoth the Seared, who is an epic who can do the exact same job. Sissy of Flame Tongue can kind of do both jobs because she has the AoE HP burn here, but she can also activate it on her other ability. And honestly, if I had her, I can build an even faster team as far as maintaining the double HP burn activation, which is kind of what I lost by not being able to use Stock the Broken, but I digress. If you wanted to run like an old school team, you can run Drexthar. He can be like your tank, negative affinity, and he can place HP burn that way. It's a lot slower, but nonetheless it could work if you're still progressing through the game. And then like I mentioned earlier, Akoth the Seared is over here, an epic who can also do AoE HP burn and is a Doom Tower accessible champion, meaning everyone will eventually have access to him. From the Undead Horde, the only one who can do it at this point is Crypt King Grawl. So if you do happen to have him, he can kind of solo like stage 20 and stage 25 on his own, just because he can place an AoE freeze. Also, he can place an AoE HP burn, and placing the freeze resets the duration of the burn. So basically, once you get going, you're good to go for the entirety of the fight, and he can maintain the control and burn all on his own. When it comes to the Dark Elves, the only person, unfortunately, is a mythical champion who I expect majority of you guys don't have, and myself included, but nonetheless he does have AoE HP burn. And the Night Res, as we showcased, was Walking Tomb during the HP burn that cannot, or AoE HP burn that cannot be resisted, making him one of the best champions and most reliable champions, specifically for hard mode Spider. The next category is debuffers, in case you're running a team that is more designed to deal as much damage quickly or kill the Spiderling, stuff like that. Demon Spawn, the only option, unfortunately, is an epic who is Gorlos Helma, who has AoE decreased defense on a 3-turn cooldown. For the Undead Hordes, once again, single-threaded. You had to have been around or happen to have pulled Vlad the Nightborn, who has AoE decreased defense. He's the only one in that faction. Really hope that eventually they do add an epic that has AoE decreased defense in the Undead Hordes, but I digress. Dark Elves, you have a couple of options. Lydia, of course, if you finished Faction War, she can do that job. Fairly reliable AoE decreased defense and weaken. Ghostborn, notable because he has the irresistible AoE decreased defense, so that will always happen every single time for consistent runs. And then if you wanted to use an epic but weaker version of Lydia, then you could run Spider, who on a 5-turn cooldown has AoE decreased defense with the chance to place the small version of Weaken. And then for the Knights Rev, I showcased Tomb Lord, who technically was just a poisoner on my squad, but he does also have the AoE decreased defense that can be placed. And then for the epics, you do have Thylesia, who can also place AoE decreased defense. Again, this is more if you're going an offensive strategy where you're trying to kill the Spiderling. And the last group is the supports, which are just champions you can enable your team to go quickly or just make it more survivable, again, depending on your progression level in the game. So first of all, Prince Kymar, of course, he's an upgrade to Renegade. He's a pure reset, which can make your team a lot more efficient if you just want to repeat activate HP burns twice or do something like that. You can have that be on your team. Wither the Crown, just a excellent healer protector type champion, not just kind of similar reviver healer protector. Helicath, block damage, you can hide under that. For the epics, we talked about Achak, who has the AoE freeze, one of the best Spider champions, even the Spider epic champions. Dur the Hunger is like a baby Duchess, which is definitely a stretch, but essentially he has a revive if you need it, healing if you need it. And then Skimfos, honorable mention, because if you don't have Cold Hearts yet and you do happen to have this guy, he does have this ability here on a 3-turn cooldown when booked that can steal 100% of the turn meter as long as the attack is critical. So he can be your turn meter control champion for the Spider boss. For the Undead Horde, in case you're taking a lot of damage from the Spiderlings and you need a cleanser, Skartorsis can do that. He does have an AoE cleanse. Battle Khazar can also be that cleanser on a 3-turn cooldown, but he can also enable a little bit more damage given his passive and interaction with poisons being present. UDK can also be a tank. He can just kind of like Drexthar, he can take damage on behalf of people on your team, especially if you run him negative affinity, or you can just run him in high resistance and all the single target Spiderling attacks will go to him regardless, thanks to his passive. Tiffy can provide block debuff, so you're immune to the poisons, and then she can also revive people if they die. And then Lich, kind of like Skimfos, is an honorable mention because he does have the single target full turn meter decrease on a 3-turn cooldown when booked, and also places decreased speed. For the Dark Elves, you can also run Blind Seer if you do happen to have her, because she does have block debuffs once again, which can protect you from the poisons, and also an AoE revive with block damage, which will also protect you from being killed once again. Visix, the Unbowed, the AoE provoke, decreased speed as well, so she can take the aggro by placing the provoke out there. Mirthrala, who we kind of showed, can bring the Hex, which is a little stronger in hard mode variations of Spider, spider, but nonetheless it can help you spread damage across the spiderlings and kill them a lot quicker. For the epics, once again, if you need more support, people are dying on your squad, then Kaden can do some work, reviving 2 allies. And then Sylar, honorable mention, because she does have an AoE on the A1, so if you're running her in a stun set, she can be your CC champion to try and control the spiderlings, and she actually has 2 AoEs. And the decreased accuracy could be helpful as well, because if the spiderlings have less accuracy, they're less likely to place the poisons on your team, assuming you have a little bit of resistance on your squad. And then lastly, we have the Knight's Revenant supports. Technically, Eric's can solo the spider even on hard mode up to 10. If you do have her in a lifesteal build or a Slayer build or something like that, she can just do AoE on the A1s, provided she has the Harvest Despair mastery to get the leech from the stuns that she'll place. But she can just spam her A1 and A2 and slowly but surely kill the spiderlings and kill the boss eventually. White Queen and Core, previous fusion champion, can be the cleanser for your team, a little bit of shielding, and then the reset on the A1 can help speed up your compositions. Theodore, as we showcased, can synergize well with any AoE HP burn on your team, being an activator himself. When it comes to the epics, if you do want the OG spider dungeon control champion, Miscreated Monster places a massive shield that protects your team on top of a chance to stun the spiderlings, which can also be your form of control. So control and protection all in one. And then if you need a reviver healer, you can run Rectored Wrath. If you need a different reviver, you can run the new epic Sabbatha, if you happen to get her or happen to have got kept a copy of her from the last fusion. And then Malkith, also Bloodflock, has a revive in his kit as well. So there you have it. That's going to be my strategy for the Corrupted Spider Tournament. Like I've said, we've seen this one in the past, which is why I tried to go a little bit faster through all of the stuff, because it's essentially just remaking or reusing the exact same teams from before. But in this case, instead of running, I think I had White King Narses in this 5th spot. I switched him out for Mithrologist to place the AoE Hex, which can again just help us deal a little bit more damage to the spiderlings and ensure that we actually kill them. But it had the side benefit in terms of the speed tune, or the turn order for all the champions, that it allowed Tomb Lord to place the poisons on all the minions, meaning that it's a lot easier for Calvlux to finish them off once he gets his big AoE off. Be sure to let me know in the comment section down below what team you're going to be running and what stage you're going to be running it on. Depending on how far you're intending to go in this Titan event, this tournament could be mandatory for your goals. And if it is your goal, hopefully this video had enough information in it that you could come up with a team on your own to run whatever level of spider is appropriate for your level of account. As always, if you did find this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below. It really does help out the channel. And if you are enjoying the content on this channel, then feel free to hit the subscribe button down below as well for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching and have a good one.